Now, there's one last thing that I want to talk about when it comes to game events, and it's quite important, and that is the nature of scope. Now, you'll notice that with a basic play event, scope is set in stone. It is game object specific. We'll look at what that means in a second. Let's move down to master door. Here we have set voice volume, and now scope has a drop-down menu. You can select between game object and global. Now, this is really important because let's say we have our big door event a number of times in a game level. This is probably going to be the case. So you're going to have a lot of different objects, a lot of different audio emitters inside your game engine, and all of them can potentially trigger the big door sound. If we set this to global, that means that when this event triggers, the volume of every single big door event in the entire game is going to be set with this event. They're all going to go up 5 decibels. So this is something that you need to be really aware of because that may be very much not what you want. You probably, in fact, are going to want this to be specific to the master door in question. So we need to make sure that this is set to game object. And then on the code side of things, your programmer will have to specify the game object in question. Let's look at another example. In the select casual event, you'll notice that for setting game parameters, we also have a scope. Let's say there is only one radio. It's a single player game. There's just a single radio. In this case, you'll want to set this to global even though there is only one physical game object, simply because it's easier to set up on the game engine side. You won't have to specify the radio. This is simply a global parameter. It's specifically for that radio. And by setting it to global, you've just simplified your code a little bit. You don't have to specify an in-game object. You just know, wise, I want this value to be at 0 no matter what. When this event is triggered, set this value to 0. So sometimes using global is an easier way to set everything up to just make it clean. Another look is ambience. Let's say we have our play city traffic event, start ambience. Perhaps this is a multiplayer game. Perhaps this is a game a lot of different people are in, and we have a global parameter that changes the time of day, and that in turn affects the value of city traffic, say. So in that case, you would also want your game parameter to be set at global because you would want every single object in the game that is affected by time of day. That could be traffic, it could be the sound of people in the environment. There could be a lot of things that are being controlled by a time of day parameter, and you don't want to have to set every single one of those objects relative to that game parameter. When you trigger this event, you just want everything controlled by the time of day parameter to change, and in that case, you would definitely need to set it at global. So when you're setting up your events and when you're creating your logic structures, just be sure to keep an eye on scope and set it according to your own needs. Also be aware that on the game engine side, if your scope is set to game object and it's not working, it may be because you haven't specified the game object, or perhaps you've specified the wrong game object. Just keep an eye on that. It's quite important and can change the design of your overall structure quite a bit. So we've looked at a lot of the different things that you can do with a WISE event at this point. You can create some really elaborate structures, or you can create just basic events, and you can go ahead into your Soundcaster sessions, set up all of these events in here, and just test how they interact with one another. Don't forget to hit reset all to make sure that your stuff is zeroed out as it would be in the game. And you can also manually control your various RTPCs and parameters here just to see how they affect the sound overall. I would encourage you to go ahead and actually play around with this and see what kinds of structures that you can come up with yourselves.